second chapter of First Thessalonians, verse 1. Remember that this verse is following the one about waiting for the coming of Messiah who would deliver us from the wrath to come, right? That wrath referring to the very end of times. Although, of course, like I already said, there were different times of punishment in the past, obviously because of the sins of the people and all that, even after Paul had written that. But the main manifestation of the wrath of Yahweh would be in the end times, as we see in the rest of the prophets. So then it says, for you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But having suffered before and having been mistreated at Philippi, as you know, we were bold in our Elohim to speak to you the good news of Yahweh in much struggle. So right after mentioning the wrath to come, the coming of Messiah who would happen through the last and during the harvest, those two times in two different ways, the first spiritual, the last, or the second more literal. He mentions the coming of Paul to Thessalonians, just like the coming of the last to the world to preach. As it says here, for yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain, as it were the two witnesses. It won't be in vain. But having suffered before and having been mistreated at Philippi, this is interesting because this name has to do with love of horses, and has couple, well, I don't doubt has more interpretations, but a couple interpretations, a positive and a negative. I'll mention them in just a moment. You see, lover of horses. So in the positive, we have the fact that the last comes as the rider of a white horse. In the negative, remember that horses, or horse in Hebrew, horse is sus. Those who worship Jesus, that name phonetically in Hebrew has a connection to a horse. So those who love horses, or those who love the horse, could represent in the negative, sadly, those who love the false name, the false Messiah, to whom the two witnesses come to speak, and from whom they would receive mockery and all of that. So, but having suffered before and having been mistreated at Philippi, as you know, we were bold in our Elohim to speak to you the good news of Yahweh in much struggle. For the appeal we make does not come from delusion, nor from uncleanness, nor from deceit, right? As the many doctrines of the world, many denominations in the world. For the appeal we make does not come from delusion. Many are deluded. Pastors, false prophets, religious leaders, etc. Nor from uncleanness. We see, sadly, a lot of uncleanness in those false doctrines. For instance, in the Catholic Church, we know a lot of stories about what those priests sometimes and sadly do to children. And not only in the Catholic Church, but it was just an example. Nor from deceit, just like most doctrines in the world. Denominations are teaching lies, starting with a false Messiah. Because if the Messiah, as he said, is the truth, then teaching of a different Messiah, a different message, is teaching a lie. So it is deceit. But as we have been approved by Elohim to be entrusted with the good news, so we speak, not as pleasing men, but Elohim who proves our hearts. This is key, and we should all understand this and practice it, because this is what most preachers don't do, and is one of the reasons why they end up teaching lies just to please people, just to have their churches filled with people and their wallets filled with money, right? Through tithes and offerings and all of that. But as we have been approved by Yahweh to be entrusted with the good news, so we speak, right? If Yahweh has given us the good news, and Mashiach told us not to keep it to ourselves, but to say it to every person that we can, then we should. Not only it is a blessing to receive the revelation, but it's also a responsibility, because if we are receiving it, it's for a reason, to also be able to give it, right? If we don't use what we have been given, we will lose it. So we don't want to do that, right? And it is just like the analogy or the parable of the talents. The one who didn't use it at all, to him Yahweh said, well, then he who had received the one talent came and said, Sovereign, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown. So this is a person who dares to judge the Almighty. And not only does he dares to judge the Almighty Creator, he does it in a wrong way. He sees the Creator as somebody who is a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. A lot of people, when they receive the revelation, when they receive understanding about the Messiah, about the scriptures, because of fear of rejection, fear of not being able to communicate well, whatever it is, because of fear, they go and hide themselves from whomever they could preach to, or they just hide the information during conversations because they are also sometimes ashamed, sadly. And I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. So he gave him exactly the same that he received, right? He didn't do anything with it. But his sovereign answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant. Imagine that. He judged his sovereign as a hard man, and because of fear, he hid what was given to him and didn't produce anything through it in the time that he had, which represents the time that we have in this world. But his sovereign answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed, which is true. But look how he doesn't say, you knew that I am a hard man, right? The sowing where, the reaping where he didn't sow is true, because Yahweh does creates things from nothing, right? But he's good, he's merciful. However, those who judge him or think that he is evil and wicked or whatever, they will receive that as their portion. You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers. At least do the least with it. And at my coming, I would have received back my own with interest. At least you would have added a little bit to it. And since right here is talking about bankers, but if we take this as a revelation, the talents, then the bankers who manage the revelation, they manage the money, in this case, manage the revelation, could be the preachers, those who are in charge of congregations. For instance, if you received a revelation and you didn't want to take it to anybody, at least you could have taken it to the congregation, to your leader, and he would have done it for you. And that would bring interest to your benefit, to your credit. So deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming, I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. So take the revelation from him and give it to him who has 10 revelations, right? For to everyone who has, more will be given. That is beautiful. That is, if you use it, right? If you give it to others, and if you also put that which you have learned to practice. So for everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. He hid the talent, so it is as if he had nothing, even though he had some. And that's what fear causes, right? Fear of the future, fear of lack of whatever. So there are a lot of people who have a lot or enough, but they act like they have nothing because they are afraid of losing that which they have. But since they don't enjoy it, it is as if they already had nothing. So what's the point? I was watching something yesterday about it was like the story of like 5 or 4 people from those wealthy families, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, so on and so forth. And it was crazy to hear the stories about how, well, some of them had killed themselves. Few of them, I think it was like a couple of them or 3 of them, because of the fear of losing the money. They lived every day with fear of losing their money. And I mean, like, I was thinking, if you would would commit suicide because of losing your money, why wouldn't you wait until you lost it? Right? Just wait till you actually lose it and then kill yourself if you think that is the way out, right? Obviously, I'm not saying go kill yourself. I'm saying it makes no sense, and that's what fear does. It takes away reason, takes away logic. The person is controlled by emotions, and emotions are led by the imagination of a bunch of things that may not ever happen, ever. So to see, I mean, those people who have all the money which they couldn't spend in several lifetimes, not being able to enjoy any of it because of fear of losing it, and even getting to a point of killing themselves because of the anxiety that that would produce in them. So what is the point? That was their God, of course, and the God killed them through fear. And there were others who I don't know how they ended up their lives, but there was one, I forget the name, but he's one of those wealthy families once again. It said that and that was like so a picture that it was like maybe from around 40, 50, yeah, like 40 or 50 years ago, maybe even more. And it was a man who would make $1 million a minute. Imagine what $1 million a minute would be in that time. And he was stingy as could be. He wouldn't use that money for anything. He wouldn't give anybody anything, and he would have spies to spy on his servants just to make sure that they wouldn't eat more than they should, just to see that they wouldn't eat a lot. So imagine, it's so sad. So yeah, it makes no sense, but that's how they live. So that's why also, once again, we shouldn't want or desire what they have, because it comes with a lot of uh baggage, with a lot of pressure, with a lot of pain, depression, fear, etc. And it's one of the many examples, or several of the many examples of how money cannot buy happiness, fulfillment, etc. So, but from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, going back to Thessalonians, But as we have been approved by Yahweh to be entrusted with the good news, so we speak, not as pleasing men. We are not teaching to please men, although we want men to be saved, right? We want men to receive Yahweh and his son, to receive salvation, to receive shalom, to receive happiness, prosperity, etc. That we want for humanity, men and women. But we are not acting to please them. We are acting to please Yahweh, who wants salvation for men, right? And that was my point regarding preachers in this world, because they start to please men. They're sheep. And I can also understand, like, having been preaching for 10 years now, thankfully, thanks to the Almighty and to you guys who also listen. Because I imagine if I had nobody listening. So uh it is so beautiful, and I can understand, because I do want to please you guys, in the sense of I want you guys to be happy in every way. But I know that the priority is what Yahweh says, what he is teaching in the scriptures. I cannot go over that just to please you guys because of how much I love you, right? And because of how much I love you, I must make sure that I please Yahweh first. And because I love you, I must make sure that I teach you guys the truth about scriptures that as he has revealed them to me. So not as pleasing man, but Yahweh, who proves our hearts. For we never came with a word of flattery, which sadly happens a lot. And I say sadly, and I mean it, because it happens a lot. I've seen it, and sadly, I've felt it from some people certain times. And then I see how they switch in the blink of an eye, in the sense that they were acting as if they were really faithful and they really loved the revelation, but then they turn around and do completely the opposite. Um, and I'm just not going to give details, just to avoid any information coming out about certain individuals, but sadly it happens. And I have mentioned it a lot, many times in the congregation, about certain people who come and they use flattery a lot. And I notice it, and I sometimes talk about it, hoping that they will see it, understand it, and not do it. But sadly, those who um, act a certain way when I speak about that, is like I mean, it goes through one ear and out the other, as it had nothing to do with them. So it is pretty sad. But obviously, that happens a lot, and even more, I would say, in all the rest of denominations and congregations in which they teach lies. Because if those preachers are looking to please men, it's because they love flattery. They love what they are told, how they are treated, where they are placed above everyone, the clothes they wear, the car they drive, the titles they give them, right? Apostle, prophet, whatever. So they love that so much that they end up being blinded, as scripture says about the wise man who is blinded by gifts. Flattery words can be uh, blinding as well to those who want to please men. So yeah, actually, well, there is a person that I've been needing to talk to, but that person is not from here, from my well, where I'm at. So I have only talked to that person through emails, and I need to talk to that person because I have um well, seen the flattery for a while, and also I have noticed that that person cannot accept any type of correction. um gets angry or things that perhaps I'm trying to be careful how to say what I'm saying, that perhaps um, I don't know, like she feels like she has a lot of authority. I don't know why. So she doesn't do much, but expects a lot. And like I said, I have heard flattery from that person, but then I have heard from others how that person has been saying the opposite behind my back, and not only about me, about other brethren. So it's talking bad about this one and about that one, and it goes there and talk. So I don't understand that behavior. And I cannot understand how a person claims to believe in the Most High and listens to the teachings and everything that is being said in scriptures and through the explanation, and still continues to act that way and doesn't see in the mirror all those things that should be changed. So yeah, it is very sad. For we never came with a word of flattery, as you know. And since people love this, when a person teaches or preaches without that, they are not liked many times because they are too blunt. And in a way, I am bold, not only bold, but bold when talking, right? So some people do not like that, and that's cool, because that is also a way to separate the real from the fake. For we never came with a word of flattery, as you know, nor we with a cloak for greed. Yahweh is witness. That's wonderful that he is able to say this, because few preachers are able to say this. Yahweh is witness that we did not come with a cloak of greed, right? Asking for money in every situation and every chance they can. Even, I don't like to ask for likes. I don't like to ask for subscriptions. I mean, I know it's necessary because of how the algorithm works and because how blocked or shadow banned we are, or if we want to grow. I understand those parts, but even then, I find it hard to ask you guys for likes or views or comments of whatever. And you guys know I never talk about money. Well, I talk about it when we need to teach about it, but not asking for it. So those two things are key: flattery and greed. We see that a lot in churches, a lot, both. And we see, in fact, that this is a big problem in, and I can say the church right now, because we are not the church. Church actually has a bad connotation to a false goddess. Well, a goddess, false Elohim. So sadly, it refers to those who are in a false doctrine. And in church, you see a lot of greed and flattery because they judge by appearances. And flattery is pretty much that, but in words, right? They say one thing, but they mean another. Just like they look a certain way, but they are different than what they are trying to appear as. So flattery goes along with falsehood, with appearances, with also the hypocrisy, which is the leaven of the Pharisees, and also greed, which you see everywhere nowadays. For we never came with a word of flattery, as you know, nor with a cloak for greed. Yahweh's witness. Nor were we looking for praise from men, not from you, nor from others, though we could have been a burden to you as emissaries of Messiah. Right? So, nor we were looking for praise from men. We don't look for praise from men. We shouldn't, as they do in the world. And I repeat, no doubt, when they are placed in a high position and they are given words of flattery and a lot of money, they start to believe to be above everyone and more important than and whatever. So they expect praise from men. And it all starts to build up. And when they see they have fallen into that temptation and they are expecting it. Nor were we looking for praise from men, nor not from you, nor from others, though we could have been a burden to you as emissaries of Messiah. And see that it doesn't say that we could have been praised by you. Not saying that, but it says we could have been a burden. Yes, in the sense of they could have expected certain things by being the teachers. They could have expected a certain treatment, certain even provisions for food and so on and so forth. But even that they avoided, though we could have been a burden to you as emissaries of Messiah. But we were gentle in your midst, like a nursing mother warmly loving her own children. Look at the analogy that it makes, for it is through the Ruach HaKodesh that is within us that we are able to nurse those who Yahweh has given us as spiritual children through our teaching, through the preaching of the good news. But we were gentle in your midst, like a nursing mother warmly loving her own children. Right? And a mother is not expecting anything or doesn't need anything from her children. Obviously expects obedience, etc. But even here it's talking about, or it seems to be talking about, newborn children, right? As those who come to believe in Messiah, they are newborns. And obviously the newborn needs attention and cannot do anything for the mother other than give her all the happiness that the mother will have in her heart for having that children. So my point is that just like a mother cannot expect or ask anything from her newborn child, neither did the emissaries of Messiah expect anything from the Thessalonians. And as the same should be with us, we shouldn't expect, as I always say, if you don't expect anything from anybody, you won't be disappointed by anybody. When you make ideas in your own mind of how something should be or what a person should do according to your own imagination, when that person doesn't do it according to your will, then the enemy will use that to make you disappointed in that person or whatever. But if we don't expect anything, we won't be disappointed. But we were gentle in your midst, like a nursing mother warmly loving her own children. So having a tender affection for you, we were well pleased to share with you not only the good news of Yahweh, but also our own lives, because you have become beloved to us. So having a tender affection for you, we were well pleased to share with you not only the good news, just like the two witnesses will share the true good news to the world, the good news of Yahweh, but also our own lives. Not only sharing the teaching, but also giving their lives, just like the two witnesses will be killed after having taught the good news. Because remember that Mashiach said, when the good news of the kingdom are preached to the whole world, then the end will come. And as I always say, the whole world refers to the civilized world. The good news of Jesus have been taught already to the whole world, and the end hasn't come. So that shows that those supposed good news, or the gospel, as they call it, right, is not the true good news. Because if it were, then the end would have come already. That's why the two witnesses must appear to show, to teach the true good news of Yahweh, of the kingdom, and then the end will come. But also our own lives, because you have become beloved to us. For you remember, brothers, our toil and hardship, for laboring night and day. In order not to burden any of you, we proclaim to you the good news of Yahweh. For you remember, brothers, our toil and hardship, for laboring night and day. In order not to burden any of you, we proclaim to you the good news of Yahweh. You are witness, Yahweh also, how set apart and righteously and blamelessly we behaved ourselves among you who believe. Even as you know how each one of you, as a father to his children, encouraging and comforting and bearing witness to you, that you would walk worthily of Elohim, who is calling you into his own reign and esteem. Because of this, we thank Yahweh without ceasing, that when you received the word of Elohim, which you heard from us, remember in Revelation 19:13, it says, and having been dressed in robe dipped in blood, his name is called the word of Yahweh. So the word of Yahweh is the name of the Messiah. The name is a word, and the name of the Messiah is the word of Yahweh. That may seem simple, but my point is that many people, or many times people claim the word of Yahweh is the scriptures. And although all scriptures were inspired by Yahushua, who is the word of Yahweh, the word of Yahweh, according to Revelation 19:13, is the name of the Son, from whom the entire scriptures were inspired, revealed by. So, and because of this, we thank Yahweh without ceasing that you received, that when you received the word of Yahweh, meaning the name of the Messiah, and therefore everything else that comes with it, right? Because some people sometimes think that when I say that, I'm just saying that you just get the name and then you're done and you don't have to do anything else or know anything else. No, it's just the beginning. And it's just the point I'm trying to make is the importance of his name, since his name is the word. And we are seeing here that they received the word. So they received the name of the Messiah, meaning they received the Messiah, they confessed his name. Therefore, they got the Ruach HaKodesh, according to John 14:26, that says that through his name we receive the Ruach, and the Ruach leads us to understand the scriptures and therefore put into practice that which we believe. And because of this, we thank Yahweh without ceasing that when you received the word of Yahweh, which you heard from us, you welcomed it, not as the word of men, right? And when it comes to the teaching itself as being the word, right, they didn't receive it as a teaching from men, something that men made up, but as the teaching from Yahweh, the teaching from the Creator. In terms of the name, since the Messiah's name is the word of Yahweh, you welcomed it not as the word of men, not as a name of the world, not as a name of the men of this world. For instance, Jesus, the name Jesus, existed until the 17th century, when the letter J was finally created, or finished being created, because it took a while, not only the shape, but then the pronunciation. So Jesus is a name of men, and a lot of men are named, well, in Latin America at least, Jesus, right? So not only that, but it is a name that doesn't mean what the true name of the Messiah means. Yahushua, Yahweh saves, the salvation of Yahweh. He who causes to exist saves. Jesus would mean several things, but nothing close to that. Depends on what language you would want to translate it according to the pronunciation of it. Like I already said, Jesus could be interpreted in different ways as, well, Jesus as hail Zeus, or behold the horse. In Greek, as well, has the connection with Zeus again. In Latin, the pig of the earth. For Zeus, Zeus is pig, and He is earth. So You welcomed it not as the word of men. Remember also what Mashiach said in John 5. I have come in my Father's name, Yahushua, Yahweh, Yahushua. I have come in my Father's name. Not only was he sent by Yahweh, his Father, but the name of his Father was within his own name. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, meaning a name of men, him you would receive. That is the false Messiah, who was given a name by this world that they claim is the name of the true Messiah. So going back to Thessalonians, that when you received the word of Yahweh, which you heard from us, you welcomed it not as the word of men, but as it is truly the word of Yahweh, which also works in you who believe. So when you believe in the name of Mashiach truly and confess his name, you receive the Ruach for it to begin working within you in order for you to change and become a new person. That is, if you truly believe, of course. For you, brothers, became imitators of the assemblies of Yahweh, which are in Yahudah, in Mashiach, Yahushua. Because you also suffered the same treatment from your own countrymen as they also from the Yehudim, right? Those who were in Yahudah received the same treatment, meaning bad treatment, from the Yehudim who didn't accept Mashiach. They rejected those who accepted Mashiach in Yahudah. The same happened with the Thessalonians, who rejected their idols, and then they began to be mistreated by their own countrymen, which is what normally happens. Nobody's a prophet in their own land. So when we begin to preach about the truth, those close to us will reject us. Most of the times, like thankfully, Yahweh works in those around us. And also, we need patience, we need growth, we need experience, several things when we come to the truth. And all of that can work to help those around you see the truth and accept it along the way. We shouldn't be discouraged to teach those around us, even if they reject it at first. We should just keep the faith, continue to do works, continue to give an example, be there for them, be open to speak, but not pressure too much after they have claimed to either reject it or understand it or whatever. Even if you see that they need more, believe more works or whatever, just be patient, pray to Yahweh for it. And we cannot force anybody to believe. We cannot force anybody to understand. It is Yahweh who gives understanding. And when we come to understand that, then it becomes easier, because we realize that if they don't get it, it's because Yahweh is not allowing them to get it. So it may not be the time, it may not be the way, or it may not be the person, right? In the sense of perhaps, there are several reasons why a person may not listen. And we need to also respect their free will, which was given to them by Yahweh. So if they choose not to hear, if they choose to reject, then we accept, as Yahweh also accepts as a gentleman when people do not want him around. And I say that because, as we know, those who reject him will receive that which they have been asking for, which is to be away from the Creator. They don't want the Creator, so the Creator will make a place for them to be without his presence. Even though he's omnipresent, he will make a reality in which his presence will be hidden almost completely. Right? Yahweh's presence is very much hidden in this reality for free will to work, for free will to exist and pretty much do what it was created for, which is for us to choose him or choose otherwise during this time, this reality, temporal reality. So once everybody has made their decisions, at the end, everybody will receive what they asked for. And those who rejected him will receive a place where his presence will be even more hidden than it is hidden in this reality. Even though he is hidden in this reality for free will to exist, he still reveals himself through the creation, through this reality, through our thoughts, and obviously through everything good that we receive, which those who are wicked take for granted because they believe they deserve it or they believe they made it. But once everything is revealed, everything is known, then they will be put in a place where his presence is hidden, so much so that they won't experience anything good at all for eternity. And once again, for you brothers became imitators of the assemblies of Yahweh, which are in Yahudah, in Mashiach, Yahushua, because you also suffered the same treatment from your own countrymen as they also from the Yodim, who killed both the sovereign Yahushua and their own prophets. Right? Just like those in Yahudah who believed in Messiah were rejected by the Yehudim who killed the Messiah and the prophets. So it happened with the Thessalonians, and it would happen with us, who killed both the sovereign Yahushua and their own prophets, and have persecuted us, and who displease Yahweh and are hostile to all men, forbidding us to speak to the nations that they might be saved. Imagine the ego, the narcissism in this man, this Yehudim, as to want to forbid the apostles, the emissaries, from teaching to the nations. Who are they? What do they think they are to prohibit the emissaries from doing what they were sent to do, even if they believe that they are wrong, even if they believed that Mashiach is not Yahushua? But the fact that they tried to forbid it shows that they knew it, even if it was subconsciously. For if they hated the Gentiles, as they still do according to the Talmud, because of the way they speak of them, then why avoid or forbid a false teaching according to their own belief to go to the Gentiles? It would confuse them even more. So it would be even good to them, according, I repeat, to what they claim to believe. So who killed both the sovereign Yahushua and their own prophets, and have persecuted us, and who displease Yahweh and are hostile to all men. Who displease Yahweh and are hostile to all men. All men. Forbidding us to speak to the nations that they might be saved. So they wanted to take salvation from the Gentiles. Imagine the punishment for them from the Father for trying to stop salvation, not only by killing the Messiah, the truth who brought salvation, not knowing that through his death, salvation would be manifest, but also forbidding the emissaries from going to the nations and speak to them the good, forbidding us to speak to the nations that they might be saved, so as to fill up their sins always. So as to fill up their sins always. They are filled with sin because of that. Verse 16, forbidding us to speak to the Gentiles that they may be saved, so as always to fill up the measure of their sins, but wrath has come upon them to the uttermost. But the wrath has come upon them to the uttermost. It has, and it will still, because there are a lot of people, even more than those at that time, who act this way. The Yehudim, who try to become an obstacle for salvation and the good news to be preached, so much so that they are trying to make it illegal in Israel for people to preach about Yahushua, right? And you could end up going, when they become able to pass that law, people will go to jail for 1 year or 2 years for preaching, depending on whom you preach to. So to the uttermost. But we, brothers, having been taken away from from you for a short while, but we, brothers, having been taken away from you for a short while, in presence, not in heart, we're much more eagerly trying to see your face with much longing. I repeat that, but we, brothers, having been taken away from you for a short while, in presence, not in heart, which in a way, remember I was talking about how this could be interpreted as the two witnesses talking to the congregation. So it just mentioned the death of the Messiah and the prophets by the hands of the Yehudim who rejected Mashiach and the teaching, obviously. Now, as if the two witnesses were killed and left, but then they would come back for the congregation, seems to fit here where it says, but we, brothers, having been taken away from you for a short while, for remember the two witnesses will be taken away after they are resurrected, and then they will be together with the congregation after the harvest, so a few days afterwards. But we, brothers, having been taken away from you for a short while, in presence, not in heart, right? For their bodies will be gone, but in heart they will still be together. We're much more eagerly trying to see your face, right? The witnesses will be eagerly trying to see the chosen few finally all together, which with much longing. We should therefore have come to you. We would therefore have come to you. I indeed, Shaul, more than once, but Satan hindered us. This is an interesting verse, because it shows that sometimes Satan is able to hinder us from doing what we want or hope for the congregation, for those around us. Even then, we must accept or understand that Yahweh allows it for a reason, and all things are for the good of those who love Yahweh. So we must accept it. But there are times when it is the enemy, so we must fight. We must stay strong and ask Yahweh to rebuke him so that we may continue. But I repeat, this is an interesting verse because it shows that Shaul wanted to go many times, but he wasn't able because Satan didn't, pretty much hindered him. We would therefore have come to you, I indeed, Shaul, more than once, but Satan hindered us. For what is our expectation or joy or crown of boasting? Is it not even you? Before our sovereign Yahushua Messiah at his coming. For what is our expectation or joy or crown of boasting? Is it not even you before our sovereign Yahushua Messiah at his coming? Right? Because imagine for a teacher like Paul and those who have taught the true good news, the joy, the crown, the boasting, the expectation for that moment when we'll be able to present the congregation before the sovereign. Is it not even you before our sovereign Yahushua Messiah at his coming? For you are our esteem and joy, right? Just like a man who is in love with his woman, his wife, that wife is his esteem and joy. The same with the congregation who is the wife of Mashiach, the bride, the esteem and joy of the good shepherd who leads the congregation to the Father Creator, to joy, crown, even boasting, because scripture says that he who will boast, he should do it only if it is about knowing the Almighty Creator and how merciful and good he is. So that's how that chapter ends.